I'm Ray O'Connor, and I'm from Stewart Hall High School in San Francisco, a school of the Sacred Heart. I'm standing here in the Chapel of the Sacred Heart, located at Digby Stuart College at the University of Roehampton, London, England. It is in this chapel that Janet Erskine Stuart, Mother Digby, and Father Joseph Aran have their final resting places. I'd like to share with you some of my research and thoughts from the educational conferences given by Janet Erskine Stuart that describe education as a faith-filled process, a process that incarnates the love of Christ through relationships that transform.
How does one write with clarity and vision on such wide-ranging topics as Janet Erskine Stuart? Perhaps her inspiration began at age 13, when her older brother paused from reading Aristotle and inquired of Janet about her telos, or final end. It seems his question to his sister, every rational being has a telos, what is yours, took immediately root and initiated a journey of intellectual curiosity that lasted 7 years and ultimately reoriented her faith. Perhaps it showed itself even earlier in her life, at age 3, as she contemplated death. She states, "I think I came to the use of reason early, for I remember thinking seriously on the subject of death at 3 years old. My brother, aged 6, who was my great source for theological questions, had explained to me what death meant and exhorted me to prepare for it. I neither liked nor believed the prospect, and asked if no one could escape. He said that Enoch and Elias had been exempt, and I made up my mind that I should be the third exemption." Mother Stuart sharpened her wit and quickened her will at a very young age, striving to discover and know ultimate reality wherein faith preceded religion. She pushed her relationship to God to ever deeper levels, leaving the religion of her birth behind and joining the Roman Catholic Church. She committed herself entirely to this new religion and expression of her faith. Her characteristic drive eventually produced the conferences on education, and exploring those conferences can reveal more of the woman we knew as Reverend Mother and we know as Janet Erskine. It's been quite a challenge to find the time and distance to take in all 12 conferences of Mother Stuart on education. I managed to cover the first third of the conferences for this paper. My hope is in Mother Stuart's own words. Words from her fourth series given at Roehampton in 1899. Familiar words, I'm sure. So we must remember that it is better to begin a great work than to finish a small one. In every order, great beginnings are better than little endings. We can only see the work in the rough. It may look ugly and yet be full of promise. 12 conferences spanning 11 years contain a wealth of information about Mother Stuart's approach to education. Most likely, these conferences laid the foundation for her 1911 book, The Education of Catholic Girls. It is with some hesitation that I employ the term pedagogy in the title of this paper. Apparently, she had this to say about the word in reference to education. This is a subject which is occupying much attention of late and has given rise to that uncouth word, pedagogy, which will not, I trust, have a permanent place in our language. One of our faults of the old teaching was the lack of method. This remark was recorded in her notes taken at her 1899 Manhattanville conference at the Committee of Studies. We know that pedagogy enjoys a well-established presence in our language, and we also know that Mother Stuart remained committed to a method of education entitled the Plan of Studies, first established by St. Madeleine Sophie Barra. A method that is incarnational, relational, and transformational. Each conference reveals a God who is always present to us, a deep care for the person, and an openness to, or maybe even an eagerness for greatness, not just of the human kind, but of the supernatural as well. No greater is this shown than in the very first series in her Conference on Education given at Maryville, 1898. She addresses the end, or telos, of our education. For Mother Stuart, it is a complete whole, an organism in its own right, and one that remains open to adaptability to new situations and times. To illustrate this, Mother Stuart refers to the Aristotelian causes, which her brother abruptly introduced to her at age 13. She refers to those causes to frame what education is in the Society of the Sacred Heart, stating, "First, let us consider its final cause. We are to raise the children to God, to teach them to reach their last end. Unless we do this, we are simply giving them instruction, which, like a varnish, rubs off on the first contact with the world." And in raising the children to God, Mother Stuart did not mean religious instruction alone. We must choose, as one of our means to this end, the perfection of our secular studies, which must be such that our students feel no desire to go to other schools. In every aspect of Sacred Heart education, the goal seeks transformation to the good. This cannot happen, though, without the other causes, efficient, material, and formal. The teacher is the efficient or instrumental cause. The teacher incarnates Sacred Heart education and builds relationships. The teacher is a hard worker possessing, as Mother Stuart desired, earnestness, knowledge, high ideals, and intense love for the real and moral weight. She must be an observer, one who thinks and reflects on what is seen. She must engage conversation, not soliloquies. She must study methods of teaching and avoid being textbook teachers. This is all very much relational, and in that teacher development directly impacts student progress. It's sobering to read Mother Stuart on a teacher's responsibility. We must give our children fair play, rope enough to hang themselves by, as the saying is. They come to us very raw material, quite unformed, and we must put into them the active principle, as it were, make them take their faculties in hand and learn how to use them, how to observe. Teach the children to define. That is excellent thinking work. There ought to be a class after which the children can never be the same again. Mother Stuart highly regarded observation. Given what she writes, not just about education, but about children and teachers, one immediately senses that Mother Stuart was a keen observer herself, noting details about human behavior that offer timeless wisdom. For example, she writes on voice, saying, "In teaching, a high-pitched voice is exciting and wearing to children. Certain cadences that end on a high note rouse opposition. A monotonous intonation wearies. Deeper and more ample tones are quieting and reassuring. But if their solemnity becomes exaggerated, they provoke a reaction. One does not come to such insight without careful observation." Considering the material cause of education, she states, "We must study our children, hence the great need of watchfulness, to be able to read even their thoughts and see their disposition in their faces." Why is this of such importance? It provides the grounding for relationships that are honest, mature, and growth-filled. If the teacher is the efficient cause, the child is the material cause in education. Students, too, enflesh the educational experience and make it what it is, but not without the impact of careful observation. Here the teacher reads the student and discerns what is truly at issue. Does a student ask a question to deepen learning and insight, or to distract and waste time? Is she distracted out of boredom or by some nagging personal issue? Observe them and note how they look, walk, act, and what they say. Since the student is the material cause of education, here he will demand the most of our time and energy. When it comes to the formal cause of education, Mother Stuart focuses on the studies, the curriculum, and the memory. The richness or poverty of our intellectual life depends largely upon our memory. Hence the necessity of developing and enriching it. It must above all be made accurate. Memory holds the key to learning, and so certain landmark historical dates should be memorized, like December 10th, 1948, along with mathematical formulae, certain scientific facts, and geographical names. Do not burden the memory with what is useless, but rather useful, like definitions in philosophy or in catechism. What is of beauty should also be memorized, for it makes the mind better for possessing it. She also emphasized the value of questioning. Our questions must be concise and pointed. We must have a definite reason for putting them. Nothing needs more foresight, more deliberation, and more searching study. Our questions should be searching and go below the surface. Let your questions be logical, flowing one from another. A mistress or teacher should not need her textbook in questioning, and will never need it if she has prepared her matter well. We must give our own conviction in teaching, and this is what wakens the flash in the minds of the children. Taken together, Mother Stuart's main concern was the final cause of education, and that was decidedly to raise the student to God. She has much to offer on faith and its place in the educational process. Reason and faith can never be in opposition. The discrepancy, if there is any, comes from some error in the reasoning or in the so-called sciences. Here Mother Stuart fastens on the pursuit of truth in education. When asked how far children should study what is wrong or what is evil, she offered a measured reply. I would answer only insofar as is necessary to safeguard truth. There is no need in dressing up giants in the guise of errors and knocking them down for the children. We show the weak points of errors by showing them the beauties of truth. Mother Stuart viewed pursuing truth and faith not as an obligation, but as a privilege. What we learn in our pursuits sets us free. We learn our limitations. It is a mark of good judgment to suspend it. To know our ignorance is the first step towards knowledge. Make the children understand. It is the highest reason to know how little we can understand. For Mother Stuart, education was not about knowing, but about freedom. Education unhinges us from the confines of the present moment and allows our intellect to roam to new ideas and higher values. Human freedom does not rest upon narrowness of rights and duties, but on one's command of a great many different ideas that permits a transformation of person. She concludes, good work in education always tells in the long run. If all our labors ended in our children knowing a little more about goodness and beauty and truth, we ought to be very grateful and thank God most sincerely. Ours must be the teaching of faith, and our exertions will produce eternal fruits. The focus now turns to the fourth series, and only 1/3 the way through Mother Stuart's Conferences on Education. It is this series that provides some of her more notable quotes. It's a fruitful dwelling place to explore her thoughts. Later, I would like to share with you what contemporary Sacred Heart education looks like at an all-boys Sacred Heart school through a video presentation on the goals and criteria of a Sacred Heart education, something I think Mother Stuart would find a good beginning. Much of the fourth series focuses on the mistress of class, who I take to be that religious of the Sacred Heart sister whose primary role is teacher. Mother Stuart would be keenly interested in these sisters because they had the most direct and consistent contact with the children. And what is the end of the mistress of class? The love of religion and its virtues. Mother Stuart points out the derivation of the word religion, re and ligere, to bind together again. Something ruptured what was once whole and united. Christians understand the rupture as the fall, conveyed to us in Genesis' second story of creation. The rebinding is baptism. Mother Stuart reflects, we want our children to love everything that binds them to God. We know how true it is that the happiest lives are those that are bound, not out of necessity, but willingly. We want to make our children take up their obligations willingly. The more we think of it, the more we understand that this is the true Catholic spirit. 100 years after the passing of Mother Stuart, we are living in a different time, but not a time unfamiliar or unwelcoming of her insights and wisdom. We still desire that our students freely grow in a personal and active faith in God, inviting to explore the mystery of God's love for them and for all creation. We still desire and welcome that transformation, which arises through real relationships in all aspects of life. Again, the end of every mistress of class is the love of religion, with its contract that binds and its virtues. It's the virtues, particularly zeal and charity, that Mother Stuart offers great insights, and why this particular series offers such memorable quotes as these. We want to make them unselfish, to make them go out of themselves. It is sometimes a reproach against us that we make our children too happy, but it is quite possible to do it in a wrong way. There are two ways of devoting oneself. One to give heart, mind, energy, everything to working for the children, doing things for them. The other to try to teach the children to do for themselves. And this is the higher way of the two. It requires more prudence, more foresight. It is more impersonal. There is less immediate return.
Amelia Byer, and my Sacred Heart education has made a huge impact on the woman I am today. This single-sex environment has taught me that my voice is important. Here girls give the speeches, hold office, write the school newspaper, earn A's in AP Calculus, are the team captains, and receive all academic awards. I can look to all of these women standing here with me at the tea, knowing we all came here as girls, ready to take in every piece of knowledge and laughter Convent gave us, and continues to do so. The Sacred Heart education has not only given me an inspiring group of friends, but also an empowering group of teachers. All of the professors encourage and teach us to expand our minds in every subject or extracurricular activity. I want to thank all of them for that, as I know I can take the confidence and lessons I have gained in every class with me as I leave for college. So thank you.
So we ought neither in the material or the mental order to do things for the children which they ought to learn to do for themselves. We want to make them independent of us. We welcome the signs of their independent work.
I'm Neve Fitzsimon. Going to convent was one of the best decisions I have ever made. Even though I was not aware of the impacts of a Sacred Heart education would make on me at the time, I somehow knew it was the right place for me. It has allowed me to discover myself in a way I never expected and will impact me far beyond how I thought high school could. Because of the classes I have been able to take and the teachers that taught them, I have become a young woman who is not afraid to be herself. I have learned a great amount about the world outside of me, gaining an immense amount of wanderlust along the way. Because of the required classes at convent, I have discovered a passion and future in computer science. The relationships with my teachers here has made me comfortable enough to talk to my future professors. Because of convent, I am graduating with a confidence that will help me survive both in New York City and in a male-dominated field.
We teach by what we are. If we are well penetrated by the thought of the ideal which we wish to form in them, it will come out unconsciously in our work. Much of our best work is done unconsciously. Our personality, our thoughts, and our wishes pass into our children, and this is as it should be. Mother Stuart places a great premium on dependence and cautions against our desire for independence, a profound understanding of education as relational. Of course, this would seem understandable for those in a convent or religious life where interdependence promotes efficiency and serves the whole. Is this not also true of a well-formed school community? Although school communities are not religious communities, both need a collaborative interdependence for their common good and goal. Mother Stuart presents a paradox in that any mistress of class, any teacher really, will have great influence only insofar as she is dependent and impersonal. She writes, "This seems a paradox. The less personality, the more influence. But it is like one of those other paradoxes in the spiritual life. Lose all to find all, die in order to live, leave thy desires in order to find rest. Unless the grain of wheat falling into the ground die. So our personality, if we sink it into the common fund, we bear much fruit." She tells a story of a young child returning home for the holidays. Her mother noted a marked improvement in her daughter and asked her which nun had helped her. Her answer delighted the mother. It is not one nun, but all the nuns. From this, Mother Stuart observes that perhaps some narrow-minded individual would have been pleased to have the work attributed to some individual. But this is wrong. We do not want units, but one whole. I should be very sorry for anyone trying to pull at an angle to the general movement of the whole. And yet Mother Stuart accepted appropriate independence, writing, "We must be independent of our children. Be their mothers and fathers, not their equals. We must stand above them on a higher level, never allowing anything like an intimacy, letting them know our likes and dislikes, the people whom we know, etc." For Mother Stuart, gaining the hearts and confidence of our students was and remains an important goal. To do so is no easy task. One may err in the extremes, such like acting as mounted police and being impassive. Such an approach shows our work but not ourselves. It lacks enthusiasm. This is surely a mistake, but better to begin this way than the other extreme, which is far worse. Of this extreme, Mother Stuart says, some people seek affection and amusement from the children, not for God, but for themselves. We say in general that when confidence is sought, it is not the right kind. This, of course, applies to the mistress of class and others, and not to those who have to direct the children. This seems an important observation, that a child's mental and emotional vulnerability calls forth a diligence of care, a personal discipline that protects them from harm. Their task as religious who were educators is not so different from our task today. In final comments, she offers the following, and when we read religious, think a Sacred Heart educator. If a religious is what she ought to be, the children will respect her even if they do not naturally like her, and we will be able to do them good. As our Mother General often said to us, nothing but sanctity really tells in the long run. A holy person will carry others to God. Those who seek themselves will carry to self. There is another observation by Mother Stuart outside her conferences that address the kind of person that children will seek out. Children like to find real people, not anxiously careful to improve them, but able to take life with a certain spontaneity as they like to take it themselves. They are frightened by those who take themselves too seriously, who are too acute, too convincing, or too brilliant. They do not like people who appear to be always on the alert, nor those of extreme temperatures, very ardent or very frigid. The people they like and trust are usually quiet, simple people who have not startling ways and do not manifest this strenuous ideals which destroy all sense of leisure in life. Upon reading this, I wondered if Mother Stuart followed her own advice, and I suspect that she did. We look at her picture with today's assumptions and can easily see a severe-looking woman, serious, acute, unapproachable, ardent. And 100 years ago, this look was common and familiar. People, especially children, could look beyond it and see the person beneath the black habit. I would like to think that Mother Stuart was that quiet, simple, approachable person who enjoyed life and invited others to enjoy it as well. Mother Stuart understood that people were not complete beings, especially children. She advises to overlook failings and faults and not lose sight of the holy, the sacred, that each person is a child of God, loved by God, and given a purpose by God. We must excuse their failings sometimes, but less and less in proportion to their progress and their advancing age. We know that to continually excuse one's failings is detrimental to the growth and maturity of the student. If any student holds a position of honor and responsibility, and many do in our schools, they must be held to a standard commensurate with that honor. Mother Stuart was sure about this and desired that we should make them understand that in proportion as they hold a higher place in the school, they are more open to criticism, and the eyes of all are fixed on them, and more is expected of them. When a student holds a public position, what they say and do matters more than others. They must be held to a higher standard, and their failings examined more closely. Why? Mother Stuart says it well. Some of our children will occupy prominent positions in the world, and what they will do will be of more importance than those whose lives will be more hidden. We must make them understand this in school. I ask students, why shouldn't a future president of the United States, a future CEO of Google, or a future Nobel Peace Prize recipient graduate from Stuart Hall High School or any school of the Sacred Heart? When I say this, they stare at me with eyes wide, thoughtfully gazing, and for a second or two, I can see them considering the possibility. I'm not sure, though, that they see themselves in such a role. Yet, it seems a Sacred Heart education today can and should challenge students to such goals and to do so with the values that Jesus lived: respect, compassion, forgiveness, and generosity. On this matter, Mother Stuart recalls Madeline Sophie's attitude. So our Mother Foundress was much too far-seeing to lay down a hard and fast plan of studies, which could not be adapted to all places and times. We are not tied down to something which we may not go beyond, nor tied to something which we cannot reach. Everything is to be proportioned to the children's needs. Intentional proportionality leads to success in the framework of a Sacred Heart education. What does the success look like? It certainly has a proposed and attainable end. Success is a future consideration, one anchored in the present yet borne forward with hope. Mother Stuart offers some of her most memorable words on success in this section of the 4th series under her Conferences of Education. Those quotes are, "We bring up our children for the future, not for the present. Not that we may enjoy the fruit of our work, but for others, for God, for the church, for their parents, for their home life. Therefore, we have to do with things raw and unfinished and unpolished. The children will come to us untaught and leave us half-taught. We sketch a plan, but never see the crowning of the edifice. So we must remember that it is better to begin a great work than to finish a small one, better to start our children in the study of Bach or Shakespeare than bring to a conclusion a little drawing-room piece or a ballad. So in every order, great beginnings are better than little endings. We can only see the work in the rough. It may look ugly and yet be full of promise. A piece of finished insignificance is no success. We sometimes meet children of this type who have a very small ideal, a very narrow horizon, but they never really take our stamp or our true children of the Sacred Heart. Our education is not meant to turn them out small and finished, but seriously begun on a wide basis. Wise parents see this and appreciate it. We are satisfied if our children leave us with some self-knowledge, some energy, some purpose. How then are self-knowledge, energy, and purpose useful? They develop character, a primary goal of a Sacred Heart education. Mother Stuart writes about this at length in The Education of Catholic Girls. Their intended scope, though, would seem narrow to us, given that Mother Stuart understood a girl's mission to be at home. That made sense given the social norms of her day. Nonetheless, she offers a fine distinction in that a girl may not be called to lead, but to influence, and to influence not many, but much. Given this distinction, the development of one's gifts, inextricably bound to one's character, must be a primary goal for our education. We must bring home to the children and to ourselves also the responsibilities of our gifts. We must put our talents at interest, not bury them in the earth. And the reason is sufficient that they are God's. Mother Stuart offers a further distinction between instruction and education. Instruction teaches a few things. Education aims at all and prepares for all. Sacred Heart education has a very wide scope of influence. At the beginning of our school year in August of 2013, our newly appointed president, Anne-Marie Kracharik, presented the year's theme to our student body, Discover and Aspire. She challenged the students to fail, because in failure one discovers gifts, traits, abilities that open the possibility to aspire anew, to new, different, maybe better things. She knew we are not finished products, perfectly formed, finished and tailored like some fine clothing. Failure brings challenges. Challenges bring innovation, and innovation brings influence. This would be how Mother Stuart would answer those who would ask, "But what do you fit your children for? What do you bring them up to?" It is true we do not bring them up for one or two definite technical ends, but so as to enable them to cope with all. It has been proved by experience that boys who have received a liberal classical education are far better fitted to take up any work in life than those who have received mere technical training, say in some branch of mathematics or natural science. This is true even today. Consider Thomas Friedman's opinion piece in the New York Times on how to get a job at Google, Part 2. He interviewed Laszlo Bock, the person who hires all new employees for Google, 100 new hires a week. We would think that Bock would look for those with specialized and technical training. The opposite could not be more true. Bock would readily hire people with no college degree. He reflects that prospective bosses today care less about what you know or where you learned it than what value you can create with what you know. General cognitive ability, that is, the ability to learn things and solve problems, to think in a formal and structured way, proves more valuable than accumulated knowledge. This seems to parallel Mother Stuart's hope that our education enables students to cope with all and to create value with what they know, not just for the workplace, but for both the natural and spiritual life. Mother Stuart believed that we all have a special work for God that remains undone unless we do it. As we move through life, we hopefully discover that special work and settle into it with an abiding peace and a deep sense of purpose. This is a pillar of Mother Stuart's pedagogy. Yet it cannot be taught. It must be discovered, and to be discovered, our students must often be reminded of it. They are children of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. They belong to God. They are sacred. I lead service immersion experiences to the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. We had a Native American high school teacher, Will Peters, speak to our group. He was a dynamic and powerful motivational speaker. At one point, he asked if any of the students in the group knew if they were sacred, if their parents, teachers, ministers, or priests ever told them they are sacred. I noticed not many hands going up, and I wondered if they were just intimidated by his question or shy before his energetic presence. I recalled all our chapels and prayers, all the times we speak about what it means to be children of the Sacred Heart. I hoped all the students' hands would have shot up together. They didn't. I suppose I have work to do in knowing my own sacredness and reminding the students of theirs. This effort belongs to that final cause of our education, the transformational aspect, that raises the heart and the mind to God. We are an incarnate, relational, and transformational people, and Sacred Heart education embodies this. We live clothed with flesh and blood, stationed in a particular time and place, meant to engage all things so as to become more in the sense of wholeness, unity, and sacredness. This end of our education, this grounding in holiness, may only be achieved if we take seriously what Mother Stuart knew and confidently said. We must remember that each one of our children is destined for a mission in life. Neither we nor they can know now what it is, but we must know and make them believe that each one has a mission in life, and she is bound to find out what it is, that there is some special work for God which will remain undone unless they do it, some place in life which no one else can fill. We all have a mission in life, live forth in particular ways. I hope it includes what American poet Mary Oliver wrote about the world of literature in her book, Blue Pastures. I stood willingly and gladly in the characters of everything. other people, trees, clouds. And this is what I learned, that the world's otherness is antidote to confusion, that standing within this otherness, the beauty and the mystery of the world out in the fields or deep inside books can re-dignify the worst stung heart. Imagine Sacred Heart education re-dignifying our world. Imagine Sacred Heart educators, students, staff, parents, all our constituencies, leading lives that re-dignify all that is marred, scarred, and disfigured, not just in ourselves and others, but in the worst stung hearts of all, our Mother Earth. What a fitting purpose, a wonderful telos, an all-filled transformation that would be. We dream large as Mother Stuart did, and we move on with that great work that Sacred Heart education has begun. I promised, if time permitted, to show you what a re-dignifying Sacred Heart education looks like at Stuart Hall High School. I would like to share with you one video that one of our seniors produced this year as a final project on his Sacred Heart education, Patrick Wong on Goal 3. There are hundreds of such videos produced since 2004. Each video focuses on one personal experience tied to the chosen goal and to class readings. I hope in viewing them you see a great work begun.
The world. It's a pretty big place, but there is only one place in which I can call home, and that is San Francisco. And in this 7x7 city filled with gorgeous landmarks, a rich history, and bustling people, I belong to a small community on the corner of Pine and Octavia. This is me, and this is my story about my experience at Stuart Hall High School. Stuart Hall is part of a network of Sacred Heart schools around the world. The Sacred Heart story dates back to 1800, when St. Madeleine Sophie Barat founded the Society of the Sacred Heart in France, dedicating her life to educating young people. A brave woman from her order, St. Rose Philippine Duchesne, brought Sacred Heart education to the United States in 1818, opening a school in St. Charles, Missouri. At the very backbone of all Sacred Heart schools are the goals and criteria. These 5 goals drive our community to be better, and it is something that we live out every day. Having been here for 4 years, I can basically recite them in my sleep because they have been seared into our brains. One in particular goal, since my freshman year, has always stuck out to me. Goal 3. Goal 3 states, schools of the Sacred Heart commit themselves to educate to a social awareness which impels to action. As I look back at my high school career, I have done a lot of service. Whether it's traveling to China to teach impoverished children how to read, write, and speak English, or the beach cleanup, I've done a wide range of service. A lot of these opportunities came from campus ministry, and so Stuart Hall really lives out Goal 3, and specifically one of its criteria. The school offers all its members opportunities for direct service and advocacy, and instills a lifelong commitment to service. During senior year, I was presented with a very difficult task for service. For my justice site, I was assigned to the Tennell Center, a rehabilitation center for mainly patients pre- and post-surgery. Having visited the Tennell Center a few times during my junior year, I noticed it wasn't a very nice place due to various odors and strange people. Remembering this in my senior year, and having been assigned because of my language ability, I was a little discouraged and did not look forward to Mondays. The first few times I went to the Tennell, it was awkward for me and a bit frightening. It wasn't until about the 4th time at the center that something momentous happened, and it helped me discover why my help was important. I remember one time I was on the 2nd floor visiting Mr. Huang outside of his room. Just a few doors down, I saw an example of a language barrier that prevented the nurse from properly helping the patient. The Chinese-speaking patient was trying to convey that she was tired and wanted to go to bed, but all the nurse could do was hand her a napkin for her nose. This was very heartbreaking to see, because obviously the patient needed help communicating her needs to the nurse. Shocked, I quickly ran over to translate for the patient and made sure she was in bed. It was this moment that I realized there were a lack of Chinese-speaking staff at the center, even though a majority of the patients only speak Chinese. Seeing that this was the case, I felt that it was my duty to help the Chinese community get through this language barrier that stands in the way between them and good care. In Rachel Naomi Reeman's In the Service of Life, I discovered that I actually did not know the difference among the words helping, fixing, and serving. Riemann says, helping is based on inequality. It is not a relationship between equals, and that helping incurs debt. She then moves on to talk about how the word serving is different, in saying that serving, like healing, is mutual. There is no debt. I am as served as the person I am serving. When I serve, I have a feeling of gratitude. This relates a lot to my own experience in service. Truly, I feel equal to the elderly people I talk with at the Tunnel Center, because although they might not be young, they are filled with amazing stories and wisdom that they have shared with me. I am very grateful, like Riemann, that the elders would share their life stories with a complete stranger. Another article that relates with my work at the Tunnel Center is William J. Byron's 10 Building Blocks of Catholic Social Teaching. In his article, he discusses the importance of principles. As Byron points out, the most important principle is the principle of human dignity, which states, every person, regardless of race, sex, age, national origin, religion, sexual orientation, employment or economic status, health, intelligence, achievement, or any other differentiating characteristic, is worthy of respect. It is this principle that I try to uphold while at the Tunnel Center. To give the patients their dignity is to truly understand what they're trying to say. And so, I am very grateful for Goal 3 and everything it has taught me. I'm sure that my passion for service will go beyond my high school years and into the rest of my life.